as they see fit and to congregate together to assemble peacefully. By what authority did you nullify the Bill of Rights in issuing this order? How do you have the power to do that?
That's above my pay grade, Tucker. So I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
Very, very soon, the can's going to run out of road. We got to open this economy. If we don't, it's going to collapse. And if the U.S. economy collapses, the world economy collapses.
Come to Chinatown. Precautions have been taken by our city. We know that there's a concern about tourism traveling all throughout the world, but we think it's very safe to be in Chinatown and hope that others will come.
Government, and we've gotten in the habit over the last 40 years of thinking that government has the answers. There's very little that government can do as efficiently and as economically as the people can do themselves. And if government would shut the doors and sneak away for about 3 weeks, we'd never miss them.
All of these places are open in South Jersey. Walgreens has a drive-through, but the inside is open. Ocean City Beach and Boardwalk all closed.
The risk to New Yorkers for coronavirus is low, and that our preparedness as a city is very high. There is no reason not to take the subway, not to take the bus, not to go out to your favorite restaurant.
Films in China and South Korea, whatever, everybody's wearing a mask. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it, because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask.
Friends that I talk to say, it's interesting. When I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add COVID to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so.
Come to Chinatown. Precautions have been taken by our city. We know that there's a concern about tourism traveling all throughout the world, but we think it's very safe to be in Chinatown and hope that others will come.
Half of the people in America do not get a flu shot, and the flu right now is far deadlier. So if you're freaked out at all about the coronavirus, you should be more concerned about the flu, and you can actually do something about it and get a flu shot.
Qualified evolutionary virologist looked at the sequences there, and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human.
So, or with experience in China,
suspected right away that the story the Chinese government was telling about this virus was almost certainly a lie. The first indication of that was the torrent of obvious nonsense coming from official sources in Beijing. Now, initially, Chinese sources, you may remember this, claimed the virus had jumped from an obscure scaly animal called a pangolin, which was sold in the Wuhan wet market. But that explanation didn't make any sense. Wet markets are seafood markets. Pangolins are mammals. So, for that matter, are bats.
Have entered a new age, an age in which American orthodoxies are being challenged from within and without. And nothing less than our national security and way of life are clearly now under threat. This age is also no less perilous than previous decades. No less is at stake. This evening, there is growing evidence that Communist China is directly responsible for the deaths of 140,000 people all around the world.
Just referred to. Now, large gatherings are banned, but liquor stores are deemed an essential service. Why, on the basis of what scientific evidence did you decide that?
Very, very soon, the can's going to run out of road. We got to open this economy. If we don't, it's going to collapse. And if the U.S. economy collapses, the world economy collapses.
As they see fit, and to congregate together to assemble peacefully. By what authority did you nullify the Bill of Rights in issuing this order? How do you have the power to do that?
That's above my pay grade, Tucker. So I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
Qualified evolutionary virologist looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So,
to this cause. No matter where the virus goes, the way to stop it will always be the same. Our collective conscientious actions. Staying home.
Containment. Is this the new normal? Is this how it's going to be? No. I can't always be in my basement. You can't always be in your house. We got to get back to work.
All these orders, they need to be reasonable and they need to be connected to public health. If you're a person trying to follow the rules, you're not going to follow stupid rules. You're not going to follow rules that have nothing to do with actually limiting the spread of the coronavirus. At the end of the day, there's no rational public health justification for telling people they can't buy tomato seeds on the one hand, but they can buy marijuana on the other, or they can get an abortion. And I think that our leaders need to think about not just whether these orders make moral sense. That's, of course, a very important question. But do they govern in a way that makes it easier for people to actually follow the social distancing guidelines?
400 ventilators. Really? What am I going to do with 400 ventilators when I need 30,000? You pick the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators. 400 ventilators. Really? What am I going to do with 400 ventilators when I need 30,000? You pick the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
We should not have been locked down. And now, I've always said if the Democrats ever had total control, they would put people like you and me in jail and throw away the key.
$10 in 48 hours? Well, I don't think so.
It's like they're manipulating a crisis to get their way.
From the Department of Health, coaching me on how to fill out death certificates. And I've never really received coaching from the Vital Statistics Agency in terms of how to do a death certificate, but they were saying, you don't have to have a confirmed laboratory test for COVID-19 in order to make the death certificate be COVID-19.
Wait. Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that is what you just said. I think.
He said the way in which we code deaths in our country is very generous in the sense that all people who die in hospitals with the coronavirus are deemed to be dying of the coronavirus. On reevaluation by the National Institute of Health, only 12% of death certificates have shown a direct causality from coronavirus, while 88% of patients who have died have at least one premorbidity. Many had 2 or 3. Definite diagnosis of COVID cannot be made, but is suspected or likely, like the circumstances are compelling with a reasonable degree of certainty. It is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as probable or presumed.
It's determined that if you have a COVID-19 admission to the hospital, you'll get paid $13,000. If that COVID-19 patient goes on a ventilator, you get $39,000.
Business violation. You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards.
Most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
Unique role in recent times to help get the world to the Sustainable Development Goal.
Every person who we're isolating, for instance, needs to have their own bathroom. And so we'll be moving people like this into other kinds of housing that we have available.
Please go away from each other and separate.
Elizabeth, New Jersey is now using drones to spread the life-saving message.
You are not immune to this virus.
Definite diagnosis of COVID cannot be made, but is suspected or likely, like the circumstances are compelling with a reasonable degree of certainty. It is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as probable or presumed.
These protests, what I see are a bunch of white people essentially saying, oh, it's affecting those people, so why do I have to change my life for them?
Disease. Did you know that your chances of recovery are 98%? This is good news.
You're starting to die because of the economy.
I'm protesting the slow erosion of our rights.
We're just here for our freedoms. People need to get back to work.
It's about your constitutional rights. We're being muzzled by the government, and don't let the mask that you wear turn into that muzzle.
Into a racial, ethnic crisis.
I think that what they're saying quite clearly, when you see the numbers, when you see the statistics, when you see the CDC data is, I want more black and brown people to die.
How they would like to commit suicide, and that is horrible. I should not have to deal with that as their friend because my friends are like my family. So this is why I'm here. It's awful. Kids are getting completely destroyed. Yes, over the state. It's horrible. Let our kids.
What is it that they're trying to channel here? Is this sort of neo-Confederacy? And what the hell does that have to do with a pandemic? Into a racial, ethnic crisis.
I think that what they're saying quite clearly, when you see the numbers, when you see the statistics, when you see the CDC data is, I want more black and brown people to die.
A flaming liberal, and he utilized this coronavirus to steal our freedoms from us. If we do not stand and fight now, this will become a communist country. How is it that workers are not essential, but liquor stores are essential? Abortion clinics are still open. They're still murdering babies right now. Yet we can't feed our families, and the police, who we pay, that are supposed to be helping us, who we pay to stand and help us authoritate this city, have turned against us because our governor is a flaming liberal.
Drones make it easier for police to see into certain areas where access by patrol cars is more difficult. That includes tight spaces between buildings, behind schools, and in backyards. The drones donated by DJI, a Chinese company, have gone to 43 agencies in 22 states.
Criminal charges against a woman called Kim Pagan. Her crime? Organizing a protest against the lockdown. In other words, she criticized the governor of New Jersey, so his employees had her arrested. Are you comfortable with that? Our leaders are comfortable with it. They applaud it. It makes life easier when your critics shut up and go to jail. They like that. In Elizabeth, New Jersey, the mayor there is using unmanned drones to spy on citizens and make certain they obey. That sounds like something they do in China. And they do. In fact, the drones are literally from China. They're made by a Chinese company called DJI. The company has donated them to 22 American states to control unruly voters. It seems obvious those drones must be sending data back to their masters in China.
The $350 billion Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, ran out of money, having disbursed all of its funds to small businesses across the country. Meanwhile, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi sat in her mansion in San Francisco, refusing to call the House back into session.
Is a very specific state of affairs and a very dire state of affairs where the military has taken over all the functions of civil government.
It was like we were in Anarchistan, or we were at war in Anarchistan.
People's rights should be protected alongside their health and safety.
So, from the suspension of habeas corpus, the two may happen in tandem when martial law forces courts to close. Habeas corpus is Latin for that you have the body. A writ of habeas corpus means that a prisoner or other detainee must be brought before the court to determine if the person's imprisonment or detention is lawful.
More. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications. Conferences, concerts, sporting events, religious services, dinner in a restaurant. None of that will resume until we find a vaccine.
As I said a few weeks ago, that the cure is worse than the disease. This cure is not even a cure. The minute you lift the lockdowns, the virus starts spreading again, whether that's May, June, July, August, or Christmas.
And inequality, with its evident effects, has led me, in union with the entire Christian people and many others, to take stock of my grave responsibility in this regard and to speak out, together with all those who are seeking urgently needed and effective solutions. The adoption of the 2030 UN Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals is an important sign of hope.
You said in your TED Talk that you worried about a virus that could be 1,000 times worse.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war.
Is this that virus?
How long will this farce go on? How long must we know what's wrong? How long will silencing go on if we don't take charge? Hope is gone. How long till all become withdrawn? How long will we believe our song? How long till right now becomes wrong? If we don't take charge, hope is gone. If we don't take charge, hope is gone.